Read Talk is supported by Read Design. With the power of machine learning, Read Design derives patterns and trends that accurately predict the characteristics of finished reads. Founded by Logan Asterling, Read Design makes quality reads with characteristics you can count on. Save valuable time and get back to what you love, making music. Visit readdesign.io to learn more. Welcome to Read Talk. I'm Margaret Marco.
And I'm Courtney Miller. Joining us today to share his read-making insight and expertise is Nicholas Tisherman, second oboe and assistant principal in the Colorado Symphony. Nicholas is also an avid teacher with a thriving private oboe studio. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Can you describe your dream read?
Sure. So, when I wake up at 2 a.m., disoriented, the pit of the Metropolitan Opera House fades away and I realize I'm just in my own bedroom. All day I'm trying to remember that reed that I was playing on in that dream. And it's a reed that lets me do pretty much whatever I want on it. So it's a reed that gives me the most for the least amount of effort. So something that's just easy, that, you know, the music just kind of spills out of it. So philosophically, that's what the read does for me. As far as how to get that, I really think a great read is just a good read made on a really good piece of cane. Because, you know, whenever I've had really, really good reads, I'm usually not the reason that read is good. It usually feels like there's something that just wants to vibrate about it. There's something that just wants to be lively and reactive and responsive. You know, I feel like in those situations, like I could have scraped it beautifully. I could have scraped it, you know, a little less than beautifully, and it would still turn out really nicely. So yeah, something that's kind of middle of the road, balanced, thin in all the right places, around the corners and the sides of the tip, good looking proportions. Mm-hmm. But yeah, something that is just good, but made on a really nice piece of cane.
And what might it be about a good piece of cane that makes it turn into a dream read? Any thoughts on that?
Sure. Cane selection is kind of something that seems like it would be more mysterious, but it actually seems to be a little bit more straightforward. Like, you know, if a piece is grainy, it's not going to conduct vibrations quite as well. If it's a little more pale, it's not going to vibrate as well. If it's a little more yellow, it will probably vibrate better. Smooth versus rough, hard versus soft. A hard piece usually is going to be more substantial for me and vibrate a little bit better. So it's those more like beautifully colored kind of yellowish pieces of cane that I find produce a read that really just, it's not even response. It's I like to use the term immediacy. I guess we're kind of splitting hairs here, but I feel like response kind of is always tied into a read that is light, whereas you can have a really nice substantial reed made out of a nice dense piece of cane, but if that cane is of a quality that really vibrates easily, then that reed will have a lot of go and a lot of immediacy to it, even if it is a little bit more substantial. I guess what I'm getting at is that you can have a not so great piece of cane and scrape the heck out of it, and you still won't get something that really responds quite as friendly a way as if you have a piece of cane that's really doing the work for you.
Do you have any favorite sources of cane that you could share with us?
Oh, sure. Right now I'm working through some Rigotti that I really like. I have gotten that from Midwest up in Minneapolis.
Oh, yeah.
They're a really good source for cane.
Well, how many reeds do you like to have ready for an orchestra performance?
I think my answer might sound a little bit like a cop-out, but I don't like to put a number on it. I think that I should always be making more and more and more reads. I think invariably if I stop at a certain number, I'll look at my case and I think I have 8 good reads or something, and the next day, you're always going to find one that it isn't quite as good as you thought it was, something that reaches its peak a little too soon in the week, and you don't get to use it for a concert. So I think that the real answer is just to keep going with that process. Because as soon as if you ever want to stop at a number, that's when I find that I really run into problems.
Oh, that's excellent advice, especially for students who may feel like, oh, I have plenty of reads. You never have plenty of reads.
Yeah, don't want to get cocky.
I find that sometimes I think I have a good read, and so it kind of sits in my case, and I think, oh, this is a concert read, and then I take it out. Oh, maybe this is not a concert read.
What are you doing for inspiration and motivation during the pandemic?
Well, first of all, I just have to say that when you asked me to be on this podcast, I immediately checked out a bunch of the episodes, and it was like 9 p.m. and I turned one on, and I instantly like couldn't stay away from the read desk. I was just so inspired to start making reads.
Thank you.
That is great. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a great resource for read makers, experienced and inexperienced, to find a little bit of inspiration to kind of get you back to the read desk or to practicing and just being with the instrument. But yeah, I'm listening to a lot of recordings for inspiration.
Any particular ones?
Yeah, actually, I was on a kick of the Zell recordings with Cleveland, listening to a lot of Mark Lifshey.
Oh, yes. Fantastic.
Really love his playing.
Yeah. Such an artist.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just it's so effortless. So on my own, I've just, been trying to practice and using this time to delve into a lot of things that I might not be able to practice and work on and really explore during a normal season. We are playing a little bit with the Colorado Symphony, which has been fabulous. It's usually kind of 1 or 2 weeks a month. We're recording Beethoven 6 this very week. So it's been really nice to play with my colleagues, even though we're like 12 feet apart.
Do you use plexiglass shields or play with masks?
We don't use shields. We don't use masks. We have a gigantic hall and a gigantic stage. Margaret, you've been on it.
That is so cool that you're able to get back and play some live music together with your colleagues.
I know. I'm so thankful. It's not much, but it's something. And I don't feel like I'm able to. Well, we're not really able to play outside right now. Yes. I'd like to be doing some more chamber music, but that's really not realistic right now.
Who are some of your read-making mentors?
I think anyone who's ever given me even a tidbit of information about reads can be a read mentor. You want to get information from everywhere and be open to anyone and any source for clues about this process. But the big mentors have been my teacher, the late Richard D'Alessio in high school, John Ferrillo and Anne-Marie Gabriel in college, and now I really consider Peter Cooper something of a mentor, sitting next to him in Colorado, because he's just full of advice and stories and all kinds of tidbits, and has given me all sorts of great ideas to try.
Well, that's wonderful and very well said. We do pick up information from many sources as we go through life, and it's wise to utilize that and put it into practice.
Right. I like your suggestion of just keeping an open mind and just taking it all in, and you never know what's going to stick and what's going to work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And very often how the learning process works is that you'll hear one thing from one mentor, and then you'll hear something that's similar enough from a different mentor, but just stated in a slightly different way or from a different perspective, and that kind of solidifies the idea. And when I was in high school, I was instructed to use a Mac Plus shape and tie it at a very specific measurement. And if that was all the advice I had ever been given, I would think that was the only way.
Right.
But working with John Ferrillo, I find that he's very good because he gives you a lot of information about the trends in read making and kind of the spectrum of different equipment and how to use that equipment in the process. So going back to the idea of shape, okay, you can have a shape and tie it at different lengths, and it's either going to, work in one way or work a little differently. Tying a little shorter, stronger opening, tying a little longer, smaller opening, and just the idea that was all a spectrum, I think was really important for me. There are all sorts of variables in this process that exist on a spectrum, and if you change one of those variables, you often have to change another variable to kind of combat that. So it's all a balance, and there's cause and effect, and you have to be very careful with your equipment and understand the effect that changing something will have on something else.
Right. And not to mention, there's so many variables, as we know. It's almost too much for a young reed maker to take in. And as you progress through your reed making process, your reed making journey, you're more receptive to taking in more of that advice you may have heard when you were 18. That means a completely different thing when you're 30 or 40. Yes. Or, as you become a better reed maker, you're able to use that information even more effectively. So it's a crazy thing that we do. It's a crazy, crazy art form. What are your thoughts on breaking in reeds?
I like to break in a reed by practicing on it a little bit before I take it into work, just so I know what it's doing.
Sure.
With new reeds, they can kind of change by the day, so it's really good to go from the reed desk and my reed tests to actually kind of playing it and really seeing how it responds and how it feels and what I need from it while I'm actually playing repertoire. But I'm very careful to kind of view this and frame this finishing work of testing and playing and breaking in and scraping a little bit more in the realm of reed making and not practicing. So the break-in process, I think that has to be part of your reed making process, not part of the practicing process.
Excellent distinction. I love that. That's so important to keep it straight. So you mentioned that you have some reed tests. Please do share.
Sure. So I studied at Juilliard's pre-college division in high school. I was working with Richard D'Alessio, and at that time, I want to say that it was pretty recently before that up in the college division, Elaine Duvas and Linda Stroman had started to kind of codify a bunch of tests that they liked to do in finishing their reeds. I think that's super important to find out what the reed can do and how it responds. So that's just introducing air really gently at first and gradually more and more to see where it wants to respond and how. Does it really take your air? Is it kind of more cushy? Does it fight you? Does it all of a sudden start? Or does it kind of sneak in like a clarinet? Also on that list is just peeping the reed, so making the distinction of making a sound on the reed in your playing position versus choking all the way up to the thread and really getting a full crow on it. Also using a test where you kind of gliss down and kind of move the reed in your playing position out, so you go from that peep, which is usually for me a C, down to what should be kind of an A. Maybe you can get away with an A flat, but if it goes any lower, that's kind of a test for looseness in the reed. So what I noticed when I went to NEC is that John Ferrillo kind of gets all of that information, but he'll get it in one test. I noticed that he'll kind of start introducing air to the reed, peep it in sort of a playing position, and continuing the air, glisses right up to a full crow. So he gets kind of all the same information, but in a little bit of a different way. So that was really interesting to make that connection and to see, okay, these are some tests that can really give me some guidance in those finishing stages, especially when I was younger and didn't really know which way to turn. And seeing those tests in action in one way in high school, and seeing Mr. Ferrillo search for the same information in a very different way. But yeah, I think what's Most important in there is kind of the aspirated attack. That first and foremost, we shoot for response, and differentiating between this soft aspirated attack